This time we will call to order the Alstyne City Council meeting for September 8th. The meeting has been duly posted. Agenda has been posted online and on doors. At this time, I would like to ask Mr. Jessica to give us an invitation followed by the pledge of allegiance.
Down your hands. Heavenly Father, we're here gathered again today to conduct the business of the Alstyne City Council. As always, we ask for your blessings and grant us the knowledge, the wisdom, and the ability to carry out the duties of this council and this city as you would see fit. We ask you to continue to bless our community, look over our first responders as they help everyone, bless our seniors, bless our veterans, bless all of our business owners, our city staff, and all of the citizens of this great city. We ask all this in your son Jesus' precious name. Amen.
So join us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the United States, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Thank you all. On item 4 on the agenda, citizen communication, I want to welcome all of our staff members, select few guests here in the City Hall with us. But most of our guests will be joining us online tonight as we continue to comply with the governor's request to limit meeting size. So now is the time for citizen comments. If anyone, either here in the City Hall, in the meeting room or online, have any comments, any questions they want to bring to the attention of council, now is the time. Ms. Jennifer?
No hands raised.
Okay, we do have people online.
2.
Okay, hearing no comments, either from online or here in the room, we will move to item 5. We were to do a proclamation tonight honoring the Alstyne Public Library. I have been asked to postpone action on that because Ms. Kinsey, our director, could not be here tonight. So we will do that at a later date. Moving to item 6, we have a presentation from Patchell Koch Consulting Engineers regarding a concept for the Central Social District. Now is the time. I probably mispronounced that.
That's all right. I'll
You'll be okay.
everybody does.
I have for over a year to do that. Wade Peterson is here tonight as a consulting engineer to the city of Van Alstyne. He has been very instrumental in the development of our concept for Central Social District. And at the request of Councilman Neal, I thought it might be a good time to let you all kind of get into the details and have your opportunity to chime in. So Wade, if you'll take from here.
Yes, my name is Wade Peterson. This is Tricia and Stephanie with our staff. They're 2 landscape architects as well. The company's name is actually Pacheco Coke, and everybody says it wrong, and so we just call it PK. It's a lot easier to do, so you can refer to us that way. It's much simpler. Okay? So glad to be here today, and want to just go through this all with you, kind of where we are. As we've kind of proclaimed in the past here, we're over here. This parking lot that's out of our front here, the project in general has that street, that parking lot, where the farmer's market is today, on the 121 here, and around the rest of the square to the water tower. In general, that's the area that we're looking at right here. A year ago, we came back with just a concept plan that said, okay, here's the general area where we're going to be working in. Here are the kind of things that we're going to have here or proposing to have. And that was, we worked with Park Board, CDC, and Council to get that far. And at that point, that was approved as the kind of the idea of the space. And then, last January, we were awarded the preliminary design contract, and what that does is just allows us to go far enough in the design to be able to say, it's gonna cost about this much, so that you all can make informed financial decisions moving forward. We finished that in April and came up with cost. And you guys have been all brought into that, and then you got bond funds or a bond election to be able to make that happen. And so now the next step is for us to go into the design development phase, which is kind of where you choose the details, the finer detail, what colors you're gonna have, what kind of materials, how big is this gonna be, or priorities. And then construction documents is just going down into the nitty gritty detail to make sure you get what you need to have. Okay. This is, the old interurban railway map on the right. Tricia has told me that this middle picture right here is actually the first run in 1908 from Van Alstyne to Denison on the rail. And that top one is actually the Van Alstyne rail station. And so, and of course, I understand you have a coffee shop and the store here on the left. So you've got some really neat things here. And the design of the community in general has kind of stayed intact, and we'd like to emphasize that and play off of that as we go through. And this is called the Texas Interurban Railway. And so there's a few different design features that takes into it. One is kind of bright and earth tone colors, reds, yellows, tans, the brick that you see everywhere, and then steel with rivets and archways and grid work. And you can see that throughout most rail designs, especially the interurban railway thing. So we'd like to take this thing that you have, or that's been brought forth in your history, and incorporate those things into this more modern space that you have out here. So for structures, there's a few things. You can see that the steel girders and rivets and metal pieces. You can go with, a standard tilt roof or an arched roof, but they all have that same feel, where you might have brick accent columns and metal framework and letters. And so one of the things that we're going to be doing during this design development is to work through things like this, where you all can tell us, you know what, I really like that kind of design style on the bottom more than the top, or the top more than the bottom. And then we can take that and kind of emphasize that throughout the process. Some of the other structures we have on the upper left here, we have a pavilion, outdoor pavilion area where you can gather together. You've got a shade structure that has a tilted lawn where you can have a concert lawn. So you can sit here and under that shade and have the concert venue right here. And that way you can gather a lot of people in that area and all together for that. This centerpiece, well, you can see even the furniture, like these adult swings and things here, are made out of that pretty heavy steel that can emphasize that thing. In the bottom right, you have a restroom. Now, that is actually wood, but it's a prefabricated one, so we can say we want a 4-stall bathroom, but instead of this, we wanted to make it with steel and an arched roof and red bricks. And then you can have it made and brought in that way to make sure that you can get the design style you want without having to have something custom built all the time. In the splash pad, this centerpiece, right now we have it as a splash pad that can accommodate 25 kids at a time, roughly. Okay. This is recirculating water. It goes down in and it's treated underground in a pump vault, and you just see a little lid in the grass somewhere over next to it, and it just recirculates and cleans that water. It has different lights. It's easily programmable, so you can do it to music. You can run a pattern throughout the day. It can shut off as the winds. It shuts off automatically if the wind gets too hot, or if you don't want it to ever run after 10 p.m. You can do all sorts of neat things with it and let it run its course. One we just finished in Addison, they wanted us to do 4 shows that were programmed to 4 songs that they played different seasons. A Christmas song and then a Halloween song and 4th of July song and things, even so. During those times, the lights and the water did their thing. Okay, specialty paving. Dealing with kind of that rail thing, as you can see here, the railways used to have big turnaround yards where you pull into it and rotate the train and send it out in a different direction. We've kind of organized the space based on that center concept. And so we can do little paving patterns and things that hint at that, where the shows in, it comes around there, and the show's going off in different areas in town. And you can, like, even in your streets over here, you still have some of the rails in the street, and we can emphasize that or bring them into this, or do several things to kind of emphasize that. As Tricia said, Tricia is good about describing that. Is you can go too far and make something really cheesy, or you can emphasize what's good about it. And so we can do these little hints and things into the paving that hint at that rail thing without being overly dramatic about it. Pedestrian lighting, period type lighting that's adapted for today with LED fixtures and cutoff luminaires so it doesn't bleed light into the sky all over the place, but that look more antique and of this time. Site furnishings and things. One of the things that we have is we have that wall along this side. One, to just kind of help buffer that from the residents that live over there in that street. But in addition to that, we can do some neat things, whether on the outside or the inside of the wall. You can do like historic panels that might tell the history of Van Alstyne as you go along. And they can be lit like this and really provide some interesting features to the space. Site furnishings, you've got some really great heavy steel benches around downtown anyway. That's the kind of furniture and things that we would be looking for anyway. So we would like to continue that and bring that up through the design as well. On the bottom right, you can see there's some kind of artwork, tile artwork and mural-like things that used to go on all the red brick buildings around. We can incorporate that into a lot, whether it's in the water tower or on this wall as well. Landscape, everything you see here is extremely drought tolerant and hardy. And fortunately, we've been able to get growers to breed plants over the last, couple, 10 or 20 years that look great for a longer period of time and don't need a whole bunch of water and maintenance. And so that's what we have planned for these spaces. It not only kind of fits with the design thing, but it sure cuts down on all the maintenance and the hassle that you normally have to put into a landscape. Then in the bottom right, you can see, for example, just those railways. There might be things that are important to the history of Van Alstyne that we might want to just incorporate as background elements within the landscape throughout. And we can do that in all sorts of different places to kind of re-emphasize and focus on that thing. Right. As a part of this, we don't want to, and Lane has been very good about reminding us of this. Whatever you start to do in town, if you're going to have a major space like this that has some significant branding to it, you don't want to make this space different than everything else in the whole city. You want to make sure that those all tie together in a good way. So as part of this, we were looking at your schools, which are in purple, your parks, which are in green, and the major trail connections between them and things. For that, if you wanted to have like a citywide signage program where your entry to the park might have that same style and theme of architecture, finish your space out in here. There's some grants that you have now that can work towards this as well. But if we have these kind of standards in place, that way you've always got the cast stone and the red brick and the steel structures and things, so that every time you build something new in town, you can incorporate these design styles. And before you know it, you know exactly when you're at Alstyne and when you're leaving. So it's kind of those great fields.
You talked a little bit about gateway signage and how that may,
For example, when you're coming into town, you want to know when you're coming into that Alstyne and when you're leaving. So you can prepare these kinds of monuments that have the same, even down to the same letter and the same font styles and everything. So as you're going into town, you know when you're coming in from any direction. As you reach major points like Dorsmore Park or whatever, you can have those gateway monument signs too. So that you recognize when you're approaching things that are important and that are destination points throughout. Okay, our next steps. We have gathered our consultants. We have to have, we are a firm that does survey, civil engineering, utilities, landscape architecture, lighting, etc. But we have to have some specialty consultants like sound consultants for the concert venue equipment, electrical engineers for dealing with some of the utilities, and structural engineers. There's also been some areas like, for example, where the old lumberyard used to be. We did some early investigations and found there was some contaminated soils there. That's already been remediated. We did that early because you didn't want something like that holding you up at the very end. So that's already been taken care of and moved off site and replaced with satisfactory materials. So the next step that we're going to do is we have a couple of options. The idea is that we want to design this during this fall and winter and start construction in March-ish. Okay? To make that happen, there's a couple of different options. There's typically 3 ways that you can procure a project that we use. One of them is called design bid build. We design the plans, we put them out there on the street, and whatever contractors want to come and turn in a price. And whoever is the lowest price, you use them. The problem with that one is you never know who you're going to get. You might get a really incompetent contractor that made a mistake in their pricing, and then you're fighting with them the whole time. You know, that's one. That method, though, tends to get the lowest prices, but it's a real coin toss whether you get somebody that's competent. Okay? Second one is design build. You can go out and get a contractor that will drive everything. The schedule, he hires the architect, he hires the designers and everything. The bonus to that is it's very fast. It's not cheap, and you get a contractor who's more worried about saving money than he is about giving you the product that you maybe want. The third method is the one we're kind of recommending and hope that you'll go for. It's called a construction manager of risk. What that would do is we'll start our preliminary design. We will help you all turn out an invitation to general contractors, and you can pre-qualify them. So you can make sure that only the best contractors actually turn something in. And then you choose them based on their qualifications and references. And once you choose them, then they take our plans and they help us through the design process. For example, we might say, we want Schedule 40 steel here. And they might say, you know what, that's overkill. You don't need that much. You only need 18 gauge steel. And if we do that, our metal fabricators tell us that we can save $50,000 on the structure. So then we work with them through all those details to get the best value for your dollar. And by the time the plans are ready and done and complete, you know exactly how much it's going to cost. You have what's called a guaranteed maximum price, so you know exactly what you're going to pay for the project. And you know that your schedule is realistic. And these early long lead items, like these prefabricated structures, they can start worrying about those in November instead of March and get ahead of the game. So that is what we are recommending that we process you go through. You guys will be able to choose which contractor you would like to do the job up front. And during these plan submittals, we'll be going through and working with land and lighting and you'll be updated, of course, but going through the individual details of cost. One thing we don't know, and I think you guys have all figured out this, a few years ago, we went to bid on a job and concrete was $3.60 a square foot. And it went to $5.80 a square foot in 3 weeks. Okay? It added almost $2 million to one of our projects. No one could have anticipated that, and we had to just completely stop and backpedal and reshift everything. We have produced cost estimates that show this in general is what we believe we can build if nothing big changes right now. But we'll be looking to you all for priorities. For example, you want a concrete parking lot, that's great, but if we determine we might be able to do an asphalt parking lot, and then you can finish this whole street too, we might decide to go that direction. You guys will be able to, we'll have some kind of menu selections so we can say, this is where we want to focus our money, or we want to do this much, or we want to do this much. So that's what the next few months are in. So we plan on taking between now and December, working through the nitty-gritty details of the project. And then starting in January and February, getting kind of prepped and ready to start construction when the weather makes it. So I would really love any comments, input. If you want us to go back and forth, anything you saw, you said, no, I just can't live with that, that's really awful, or I really prefer this, or, and I see, I'm making this up, but a stage, I don't want a stage, I want this, or I don't want a restroom, I want this, whatever. But any kind of thoughts or input or ideas that you all have, we'd love to hear.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Appreciate the opportunity to ask those questions in your presentation. So maybe I'm not that.
Yes.
If you have questions.
One thing I've always wondered since I saw this, I like it, but the stage, what made you decide to put the stage in that corner? Where it seems like the music would be amplified but away from the downtown instead of going to the downtown. Unless I'm.
It's Trish, you want to kind of jump in a little bit here?
I think in the early stages, we had had it at different locations, and I think we had first had it originally closest to the neighborhood, but the neighborhood had issues with it being too close. And so we wanted it to be situated as close to the downtown as possible. And that's why we made the wall where it is, so that it would actually create more of like a sound wall as well.
This sinks down in here, so
Right.
this is actually a raised berm, and so it kind of helps block and deflect up the whole of the neighborhood.
Did you consult your music people, like you said, the sound people, or do we know that that's the best way to have the best sound?
We preliminarily talked to them, and they said at this kind of distances, the difference is marginal.
And just from the feedback from our initial talks with the neighborhood, adjacent neighborhood and the initial park board, they had wanted it closer to the downtown versus having it closer to the neighborhood.
That's very.
Hey, did you have a concert?
I don't remember that.
Oh, wait, because you have concerts and things here too, that part of it is you've got semis and trucks and everything back and forth, and I think there was maybe a little bit of hesitation of just having all the hyperactivity right in front of them. But the gist of it is that when you're blowing music back this way or going this way, it's so compact and small of an area, with those kind of decibels, it's not a whole lot.
So do you have a space for like a bus if we had some entertainer that had a bus?
Yeah,
Or do they park?
this street, we've deliberately made so it closes off on both ends. So if during any events, this whole street closes off, bus can pull into here, it can pull up here and around this corner and unload, but this whole space is loading and unloading zone for vendors, food trucks, music venues, etc.
What is the size of the splash pad? I know you said it'd be people,
Right now, it's designed to be about 30 foot diameter.
About here to the microphone-ish in diameter, so kind of imagine that's sort of
You said it's larger than the one in Melissa?
The one in Melissa is about 22 feet, I think.
But
Yeah, but
yes,
it's
to
larger.
accommodate about, 20 to 25 people.
We put one almost, if you haven't been, it is in downtown Roanoke, right from the city hall. It is about this same size. And we've watched it pretty close, and you can get a lot of different kids in there at one time.
I'm sure how that would fly if there's a concert going at the same time.
No, it won't. You shut it down.
Right.
And this pavement
Total,
that's right
total
here,
walkable.
it's, when you turn it off, it takes about 10 minutes to drive, and then you walk across it like that. Totally handicap accessible, and the water falls down through these 1/4-inch gaps in the pavers and recirculates underneath.
I like it, I guess I just thought it was, the splash pad thought process was a little bit away from the center of all this, it was gonna be an actual splash pad. Like in a, with all the stuff in it.
Oh, now that, it is not a play splash pad like Anna's with toys and things.
Which is what I had, and I don't know if
This
anybody
is-
here
this
was,
is more of
but
what
the city
they
was
would call-
thinking of that. They were thinking more of something like that.
Most of the time, if you're going to do things with the toys and those kind of features, it's actually in a park and not an urban setting. All the ones that we work with all across the country, if they're in a downtown urban setting, shopping district or anything else, are like this, they're more
The water.
top feature,
Right.
kind of without toys.
Like a multi-purpose. So you can use it for kind of
Right.
Yeah.
entertainment.
The thought was not to lock it in to any one
Use.
use.
We are, not so much now that they're circulating more, but if you get into, for example, it used to be when you get into water restrictions and they have to turn them off for 3 months or something, then it's just like having an empty pool, it's bad. This way, when it's not running, you almost don't know that's what it is. It's just kind of a central plaza feature.
Can you use the lights without the fountain?
Yes.
It's perfect when you have your festival, so that you can still have it as a usable space.
Initial thoughts, sod or turf?
Soft. Artificial turf is nice. There's a couple of problems with it still, and that's, one, it's $9 a square foot, okay? But the bonus to it is that it lasts a very long time and you don't have to mow it and everything. But there's always the impression that if you put in artificial turf, you don't have to maintain it, and that is exactly, you maintain it every bit as much as normal grass, it just doesn't use water. And right now, if in the heat of the day, it's almost 200 degrees on the surface of artificial turf. And if you water it down to keep it cool, it takes 45 minutes to cool it down and only 25 minutes to get back up to the same heat again. So you can't ever catch up right now. And the only way you can get ahead of it is to use these special gel things that you rake into it, and that adds another $3 a square foot. You know, so it becomes very, very expensive. And we find that the only time we're using it is in sports or dog parks. That's usually where we're doing it. Now, someday, in the near future, I expect in 5 years, artificial turf will have some of the technologies with cork and water gel and stuff that you can be able to really consider it. We're changing downtown Salinas into turf right now because it finally got down to a price point that you live with.
The spaces where you have right now are marked, each one, and then the big concrete that you have leading up to the splash pad. Yeah, and all the concrete that's around there, is that concrete?
Yes, there's, well, concrete here, like, we plan on accented concrete, so you might have colored concrete with paver banding, for example, or steel banding, winter trails or whatever. The this is normal concrete, these are colored concrete, these are paver bands or paver fields, you know, and so we can accent that. And you can increase or shrink it or enlarge it depending on where your budget is.
So that was my point, was middle of June, it's 105 degrees outside. I was just thinking, little kids, anybody walking on that concrete, no shoes or anything like that, they're not gonna like that very much.
And I go like this.
No.
This is gonna be the space where they're gonna have to stay. Yeah.
But-
We can shrink that, I think is what you're asking.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, or is there any other material that you can use that still accents, I don't know, the look of Van Alstyne, but, can stay, 10 degrees cooler in 105 degree heat rather than concrete?
we'll look at that. One of the things you'll notice is a very light colored concrete. The lighter the color, the cooler it stays. The more the reflectivity kicks in and doesn't absorb heat. So, we can look at that. We've also looked at, there's some, it's almost like high school track material, some rubber that now doesn't look like this rubber. It's, you can coat something with it and it stays nice and smooth and it's a little bit cooler if you use it the right way. There are options though, and we're glad to look at it.
Are the trees behind the stage, are those the original trees that are out there
Yes.
right now?
There's one big tree right here, that huge one in the middle. I don't know how much you know about the tree. It's a cottonwood. It's in its last 20% of life. And cottonwoods have the most invasive root structure of almost any tree out there. And I hate for you to, we don't believe it's worth having it for that extra 20% of its life and ruin your paving and utilities in the strip. That will be a problem. So we are recommending that biggest tree be taken out, but most all of the other trees we would recommend keeping.
And then you have food trucks on, the east side down there.
Here. Yeah. These 4 or 5 places in here, and when the street's closed, you can have here and here as well, or even here and here, just as long as we have some access through.
And then I don't see, do we have, the design for tables around that, outside of that, behind it on the east side?
Oh, on this side?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about. We don't show all of the detail, but yes, there's, these are 15-foot sidewalks, something like that. They're expanded sidewalks so you can have cafe tables all the way along where the food trucks are. And these spaces, of course, here's where you can see the tables and chairs right here. Where these food
Right, we
trucks
have
here,
it mostly
underneath
by
the trees right
trees
there.
on the plaza side, mostly.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm just trying to look at it.
Here, where we're showing all the tables and chairs right now.
Yeah, just continue, ability for shade in middle of summer, because that's, you gotta get some sort of shade out there. And so trees, the pavilion,
This is a pavilion, that's just for use. This, it might be a band show, but it's just a pavilion when you don't need it for anything else. This is or something similar to this, another project we've done is really popular, that people just come up and sit under there and parents love to sit here and watch the kids on the splash pads and get in the shade and stay on the grass and there, it's cool. And it's quite so impressive.
how big is the playground?
Playground, it's not huge, I'd say that looks like 20 by 60, 25 by 60.
Yeah,
It's about the size of the playgrounds we have right now.
and that would be, for me, go back to Marlo's point, if you're not gonna have a interactive splash pad, meaning one that's got the toys and the fun or games or whatever it is. Emphasizing a little bit bigger of space from the playground standpoint for kids to play on it would probably, be something to look into, because, if we're talking about getting 500 people down there, 250, 500 people, whatever it is, you're talking about 100 of those being kids under the age of, or 50, 60 of those being kids under the age of 10, so they're gonna want to play. And so I think think that's important too as well.
Okay.
And I don't know with limited space over there because of the well,
Well, it might be too, that we might be able to introduce some secondary play deals into these type spaces in the corners, you know, where we get a little bit. Our intent of putting the primary play structure here is away from the higher speed roadways and closer. to
yeah,
the
no, that
rest.
makes a lot of sense, absolutely.
But there's ways we can incorporate some of that. There's also these spaces over here that have some potential as well.
And you guys have done, I'm assuming, a complete walkthrough of downtown and what our current structures look like are to incorporate that, because I think, for me, you know, putting this space in play is how we keep Alstyne looking the way it is, but freshen it up, if that makes sense. So-
Right, and that's where we put, your motto on there, you know, where you had said, right,
So the
proud history and bright future. It's making sure that we're incorporating a lot of modern features, but still having it honoring your history.
Yeah.
So-
Well, and it's really more like the roads, the pavements, the design, access features, the gardening and all that stuff that's gonna be out there, like that's all stuff that'll bleed into the rest of downtown as we continue years and years to move forward as we unify kind of the look all together.
Right,
And so that helps if it's similar, because then we don't have to do a whole lot, we just have to basically just, you know, spruce it up.
Yeah, and there's something that you all can do along the way, as you set a design theme, you know, and you kind of get where you're comfortable with that. You can even then start to implement, for example, a design district where you guys can control the design for new development. Where you say, okay, new developers, you come in here, here are the 6 material types you're gonna use.
Yeah.
You know, and that way you can keep this theme and you can spread it throughout.
start developing it, almost like a design guideline for your city.
There is, as Ryan mentioned, the water storage tank and pump in the southwest corner. Right now, the fenced area consumes a significant part of the block. How can you reduce that, still protect the space, and make it less unsightly?
We have a really nice black wrought iron security fence around it now. We have to keep that.
Right, I think we were pretty much tied to those limits, and I think we spoke with your engineering. So we just wanted to be sure that we enhance the limits of that, and there's certain things that we could do to those fencing, but we make sure that it's a nice fencing too, that it ties to our overall theme.
We can even bring up or partially, you know, ornamental panel on the side of this and things like that, just to kind of make it fade away and disappear as well. That is one of our concerns, because it's something we can't work around, you know, it's gotta, well, we have to work around it, let's say, we can't just move it.
There's different things we can show you that other cities have done, where they've painted on the water towers and make it part of your city enhancement. Like, you know, especially your big tower too, having some nice specialty lighting onto your towers and,
Like, where is,
so we can certainly forward that on too.
Okay.
oh, like that mural on the right hand side there, you know, there used to be old murals on the old brick walls and everything like that. We could go so far as to make it look like brick and have murals on it, you know, there's lots you could do to kind of make it faded. and
Right.
tied in.
Yeah, you had mentioned some potential with the wall on the north side. Perhaps the same kind of thing can be done on fence that's around the water tank and make it a feature of.
Do you have any problems with us, instead of a wrought iron metal fence, if we were to do a single width brick wall around it? Is there any
You just have
problem with
to
that?
have the according to TCQ requirements, you have to have an anti-intrusion.
We could make that. Can we do like South America, with brick bottles and stuff on top?
It works.
Yeah.
Not with the razor wire. I mean, it's-
Okay.
Any
Is
other
that part,
questions?
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Is that part like, train theme? I can't remember if did we discuss that or the playground?
It does
It'll
have,
fit with the rest of the
yes, it will
park.
have like, rail theme.
Rail
Okay.
elements.
And on the back here, from the parking lot all the way down Alstyne Park, 121 all the way down to Alstyne Parkway, that will fence blocking out the railroad track, correct?
We do have planned, security fencing, yes, by the parking lot, to the street, yes.
Yeah, I think lighting, controlling the heat, plenty of shade, room for kids to play with, lots of space for adults to, do their thing, and also with, concerts, music, events, things of that nature. And then security, are kind of like, those things are ample, and then you get the design part down with what kind of materials you want to use that match, what we have currently in Van Alstyne. But like I said, but, kind of sprucing it up. I think, adding something like this is huge for everything that we do in downtown, so.
Okay. Anything else from council?
It is Wade's 28th
28th.
wedding anniversary tonight, so he is excused.
Yeah, I appreciate you letting me run away.
Run.
Yeah. Well, the good part is I just live a few miles down the road here, so it makes it easy.
All right, Mr. Peterson, thanks again for coming up.
Thank you all.
Ladies, we appreciate y'all's insight and work on the project.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the discussion on item 6 on our agenda. Item 7, we will be going into executive session. In accordance with chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, open meetings law, the city council may meet in a closed executive session pursuant to applicable laws. In this case, we are specifically going into executive session based on code section 551.071, legal advice. I make it 7:12 p.m. and we will go into executive session at that time. Okay, Jennifer, are we still on line?
Yes.
Thank you. And it's 7:54, and we are out of executive session and back to our regular meeting. The topic of the executive session, once again, is legal advice, specifically regarding proposed development agreement between the city of Alstyne and Wisdom Nashville LLC. Again, 7:54 PM. I can make note of that before we forget. We are now moving on to item 8, now that we're back in open meeting. Consider and take any action necessary regarding our executive session items. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I would like to make a motion to authorize the city manager to negotiate and finalize definitive agreements to be considered for final approval by the city council on October 13th, 2020, with terms consistent with the provisions of the term sheet signed by Rislam on September 4th, 2020, which term sheet shall be non-binding on the city of Alstyne.
Very good, we have a motion, is there a second? Ms. Butler has seconded the motion, is there any discussion on that motion regarding the revised development agreement and the authorizing the city manager to further negotiate? Hearing no discussion, it's time to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Elaine, for all the efforts that you have put into this over many months. And Mr. Hauser, with his legal advice. Moving to our public hearings now. Item 9 on our agenda is conduct a public hearing to consider testimony on a voluntary annexation request by the owner agent of an approximately 39.875 acre tract of land in Grayson County, Texas. Legally described as a tract of land situated in the William Krieger Survey, abstract number 201, Grayson County, Texas. Also situated in the William Krieger Survey, abstract number 164, and the NHE Survey, abstract number 431, Cotton County, Texas, and generally located north of County Road 377 and east of the Dallas Area Rapid Transit Railroad. For anyone that would like to speak to the requested annexation?
I would just like to say, please ignore my picture. That is the wrong property.
Okay. We will ignore that. We recognize Mr. Williams.
Robbie Williams, and Alstyne Economic Development Corporation. Just again, want to request that you consider annexation of our 39.875 acres. It's going to be our Cold Springs Industrial Park Phase 2. We'd like to bring it to the city, get it zoned properly, and start bringing business in. I'm here for any questions if you have them.
Okay, is there any comments from anyone else on the city staff during the public hearing? Any comments from those joining us online?
No.
Hearing none, I will declare this public hearing to be closed. We move to item 10, also a public hearing. Conduct a public hearing to consider testimony on a request by the owner agent of an approximately 39.875 acre tract of land to rezone from agricultural upon annexation to manufacturing / industrial district heavy MI2 for industrial uses. The property is legally described as a tract of land situated in the William Krieger Survey, abstract number 201, Grayson County, Texas. Also situated in the William Krieger Survey, abstract number 164, and the NHE Survey, abstract number 431, Cotton County, Texas. And generally located north of County Road 377 and east of the Dallas Area Rapid Transit Railroad. This is, of course, the same piece of property. This request is to rezone, assuming annexation. Yes, sir, Mr.
Just requesting zoning to MI2 to remain consistent with the first phase of the industrial park. It also gives us more leeway as to what we can bring in. Covenants and restrictions from the sale mean that we have to keep it clean, no concrete batch plants, line plants, anything of that nature. But otherwise, it gives us a lot of leeway in what we can require.
Very good. Any other comments from city staff? Any comments from persons online?
No.
Hearing none, I will declare this public hearing to be closed. We will move to item 11 on our agenda, Also, it's a public hearing. Conduct a public hearing to consider testimony for or against the proposed 2020 tax rate of 0.584456 for $100 of value for the city of Alstyne. This item was discussed at our prior meeting, and we did set the public hearing for tonight, as it is feeds into our budget. Any comments from anyone in the room? Any comments from anyone online?
No.
Thank you, ma'am. Hearing no comments or seeing none online, I will declare this public hearing to be closed. Move to the consent agenda. We have a request to withdraw items 15, 17, and 18 from the consent agenda and discuss those separately. Therefore, I will read the balance of the objects listed in the consent agenda, and we can decide if we want to remove anything else from consent. Item 12, approval of minutes from the city council, the August 6, 2020 work session meeting, August 11, 2020 regular meeting, and August 25, 2020 call meeting. Item 13, approval of an ordinance abandoning an easement in Block 1 of the West Fulton Edition at 422 West Fulton Street. Item 14, approval of a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign an interlocal agreement with Texoma Council of Governments, TCOG, for GIS services for fiscal year 2021. Item 16, approval of a resolution appointing Lynn McManus as a voting member of the Technical Advisory Committee of the Sherman-Denison Metropolitan Planning Organization. Item 19, approval of an ordinance amending City of Alstyne Code of Ordinances, Section 30-61, park hours to modify the hours parks are open to the public. And item 20.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, for item 20, can we move 19 to the regular agenda, please?
We will move item 19 to the regular agenda. Thank you. Item 20, passage of a resolution setting a public hearing for October 13, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. at Alstyne City Hall on the proposed annexation of certain property by the city of Alstyne, Texas, being a tract of land located in Grayson County, Texas, being an approximately 0.7183 acre tract of land situated in the James McKinney Survey, abstract number 770, Grayson County, Texas, and being a portion of Block 14, Block A, Graywood Heights Edition, in addition to Grayson County, Texas, according to the plat of record, filed of record in volume 7, page 87, plat records, Grayson County, Texas, BRGCT, same being those lots conveyed to HRCP-RC, according to the document file of record in volume 1805, page 435, official public records of Grayson County, Texas, OPRGCT, and generally located west of Graywood Drive and south of Clover Street. Those 5 items remain on our consent agenda. And anyone like to make a motion regarding this?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we approve items 12, 13, 14, 16, and 20 of the consent agenda.
We have a motion.
A second.
Mr. Wright has seconded that. Nice chance to pull something off. Hearing none, it's time to vote. All in favor of approving the 5 items remaining on the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, we will return to item 15, passage of a resolution continuing resolution number 08-2020-02 and a memorial declaration of a local state of disaster due to a public health emergency in response to the COVID-19 virus outbreak. Discussion in council.
I didn't really have a discussion on it, I just wanted to separate it out.
Very good.
I understand that, I know it's always in hopes of getting funds and everything for our city, but I think if some of our city government stop accepting this and stopping it, maybe it'll stop it at a higher level and we can be done with this. But if we keep going on, it's just not gonna change. It's a shame it's tied to money. So I just wanted to separate it out from the book.
Very good. Thanks for your comment. Any other comments on item 15?
So what would be the monetary impact of that? If we didn't vote to pass it?
I don't think we know.
At the last time that it was visited, I believe a couple months ago, the day after the meeting, I followed up with I guess the grants coordinator, who I believe is a library employee as well. These numbers may not be correct, but my understanding is that the city had received somewhere in the neighborhood of $70,000 at that point. And the way these funds work is there's an initial portion that's directly applied, and then there's a balance that's awarded on the county level. And so there were 70,000 that had actually been awarded to the city, and then another somewhere in the neighborhood of 225 to 250,000 that the city may be eligible for. And as far as on the state, sort of the state version of this, I believe the governor yesterday at 5 o'clock just signed an extension applying to all counties across the state, extending the COVID-19 emergency across all counties of the state. So from the state level, what we're seeing is the state is encouraging the county and city levels to continue on until they resolve this.
So we are seeing monetary benefit from this.
That's my understanding, is there have been 70,000 a couple months, as of a couple months ago. That number may well be higher.
There was $256,000 that was allotted to Van Alstyne under this declaration of disaster. It's called CARE Relief Funds, and we're working as quickly as we possibly can to get all that done. We have received 70,000, as our attorney pointed out already, and we're working down our roster of qualifying items to submit for, and addressing kind of changes as they happen. So some labor offsets and things like that, but we'll be able to recover the full amount of $256,000 under this declaration of disaster. And like I said, I think in the next, 4 to 6 weeks, I think we'll be able to close that out.
Yeah, there is a deadline, I think, before the end of the year, so we'll be relatively fast with the balance of that. I mean, it'll be applied.
But somewhere it says that if we don't comply and we don't sign these agreements every month, that we're not gonna get funding. Anything additional. It's basically,
That's correct.
level for money.
Part of the analysis is that it has to be in a disaster area that's declared a disaster area by the governing body over that at each level. So coming down from the federal government and then applying through the different subdivisions.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Jones, but the city is not imposing any restrictions other than what the governor has imposed. Is that your understanding as well? We're not doing anything extra?
That's correct.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions on item 15?
I mean, there's no disadvantage for continuing it since,
There is, if
The
every
governor.
city continues, that it's not,
well,
it's not, there's no limit inside.
yeah, but you don't cut your nose off, it's like you pay.
Do 200,000 compared to.
I mean,
Why
that's,
do that?
that's for the city who is allowed right now.
I mean, it would be different if they had something in there to force you, from a city standpoint, to do something different than the governor's already mandated, because the governor mandated it. So, I mean,
Restrictions on leaving.
We, as a city, I treat just like a tornado would come through town and we've had a disaster and there's funding available, and while the tornado is passed on, we're still in that mode where we can recoup some of the costs that we incurred from that having taken place. So I hear what you're saying.
I'm not saying our city is doing anything on top, because we're not.
No.
We're being very, very,
I think,
let me say that, but, you know, we're being decent about it, but at the end of the day, still supporting the whole.
Yeah.
And our schools are right along, they're worse than pretty much anything else. I just feel like if it's just not gonna stop. So That was my point.
It's not like it's increasing or anything, it's just,
It's continuing, I mean, we can't have open meetings here, we can't have chamber events, we can't, I mean, it's really, it's not just about this one moment, you have to put a mask on, it's about the whole community as a whole. We're not coming out of that part of it. That's my point.
Whether it's signed or not, we're not coming out of it anyways.
I know if every city and every town continues, nobody won't. That would be my point.
It'll change in November, don't worry.
That's the better. I hope,
Well, I think my comment was intended to say that if we're going to live by the governor's executive order, whether we declare it or not, we have that choice as an individual, whether we're gonna comply with the governor's executive order
right,
when it comes to indoor meeting sizes and those types of things. So the governor's executive order will stand regardless of what we do as a city council, as will the county judges, if they place the county level in Collin County. I don't know that, you know, all of our citizens, any of our citizens are going to act any differently based on what we decide here tonight.
not,
In my
not,
opinion.
not.
Okay, any other comments on item 15? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to continue the resolution, A 2020-02, mayor Doyle declaration of local state executive due to public health emergency COVID-19 virus outbreak.
We have a motion to continue the local state of disaster resolution and a second by Mr. Jessic. Any further discussion based on that motion? Hearing none, it's time to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? We have one opposed, others opposed, and one abstaining. That motion carries 4 votes to 1. Moving to item 17, we have approval of an ordinance establishing golf cart regulations. Mr. Jones, anything you want to add to this, or before we get into this?
No, I'm open to
Okay,
questions or comments and hope I have the answers.
so as I understand it, the state of Texas makes it illegal to operate a golf cart on a public road unless the city says it's okay. And the city
That
can,
is correct.
in the process of saying it's okay, the city is at liberty to have regulations, and that's what we are doing here. Yes, sir.
So I have 2 issues with it, I'm reading through it. The permitting and put the decal on there and doing all that stuff, 100, like, really cool. I get it, we have a lot of golf carts that go around Georgetown. 2 issues I had, one of them was that they needed rear view mirrors on the golf cart. I don't feel like a golf cart needs rear view mirrors.
That's state.
But,
State law.
but they will not to drive a golf cart on the city road, we can make provisions.
I don't, we try to answer that from personal experience. I lived in a golf cart community. I loved it. It's amazing to hop in your golf cart and go to the store as opposed to, you know, your automobile. It's just, for some reason, you connect with your community more. The community I lived in had stricter regulations. And yes, you had to have blinkers on your golf cart. Had to be inspected every 6 months. You had to, I mean, there was just a lot of process. But a rear view mirror is very important in a golf cart to know what's coming up behind you, because your speed is 30 miles an hour if you've got a blazingly fast golf cart, and that's pretty slow if there's a car coming up behind you and you don't drive like this. You know? So a mirror is a pretty important part of the process when you have one. Just a safety issue.
Well, and saying that we have 1,000 people that jog in the direction of the car behind
No, I
them,
know.
and everything about it. Because I'm assuming, and this might be a legal question, that any sort of approval of regulations around golf carts, the city is not held liable for anything that it
Correct.
is.
That's correct. No one could, for example, if there was an accident, no one could bring a legal, case against the city that would impose liability. It's just more of a political, thing is sort of, is the city, more of a political issue on that. One thing that we did do is we did draft this using some of our other cities that have adopted similar ordinances. And we did discuss it, run it through the police chief, and he had made several suggestions that we later incorporated to sort of, bring it into compliance with what his concerns were.
Well, so that was my thought part, my thought around it was, I get the whole permitting, tone decal, make sure it's like all that stuff. The other issue I have with it, we're not having liability, if there's a family of four, and there's two little kids, and they all wanna get in the golf cart and go down, and have only one person per seat, it's a two-seat golf cart, obviously.
That's prohibited in this.
That's prohibited in there.
Yeah.
And like putting my kid on my lap and having my wife drive the golf cart, like I don't see any issue with that, in my opinion. And if we're not it's their choice, right? It's their liability, it's not our liability.
That's correct. That is one thing that the police chief, I believe, in his review had specifically raised the issue of having a one passenger, one seat rule. And we had already had something similar in there, but we tweaked that language based on his recommendation from a public safety standpoint.
You have already tweaked it?
Yes, yeah.
What's the language now? I read it today, I didn't see.
That was, let's see, I believe it was in the, or actually, I'm sorry, that stayed the same, but that
Yeah,
one,
that stayed the same.
that was one of his concerns, was that it was a one person, one seat rule. And that was already in the ordinance when we looked at it.
And that's just, having a driver's license, drive a golf cart, totally cool, updated driver's license, so you don't have 10-year-olds driving golf carts throughout the neighborhood, going crazy, people on the roof with golf carts, stuff like that, I get all that, but I don't know, if they want to take on the liability to put 3 people in a golf cart, I don't see an issue with why the city should tell them they should have to do that.
Isn't some of that Texas law, like the requiring a driver's license, the mirrors on the sides? We can't not allow them to drive golf carts, but if we do allow them, they still have to follow the Texas.
I'll check and see sort of how much latitude they give us. I will say most of these items here, especially in the 42101, the driver's license, the headlamps, tail lamps, those do directly come from the Texas Transportation Code. Whether the city is required to impose those, I'm not sure. I think we have some latitude there, but I think the general intent is that if these are going to operate on the public roadways, that they be treated as sort of as closely as possible to a regular vehicle, a regular motor vehicle as possible from a public safety standpoint, but I can check into that.
And I see value in being as restrictive as possible. And then if somebody doesn't live up to that, that's really their liability and not our trying to be kind, if you will.
I don't see why we would be more lenient in the state.
Yeah.
The other thing was, I think you corrected it though, is there a grace period if this doesn't take effect until January? Is that right?
As far as the permitting, yeah, what we did is, and this is in a suggestion to what the chief had, is what we did is we made the permitting effective on January 1st. So that will give the city time to be able to roll out notification and give people a grace period. If they
We have to order the stickers.
Yeah, the stickers and everything like that. And so, and it will be a calendar year permit from January to December. And if someone comes in June or July or later after January, they just pay a prorated amount at $5 a month. It would be $60 a year. But it would be prorated if someone came in after January. And so that decal or sticker would be a color, and the officers would know, okay, if it's 2020, it's green, or if it's 2021, it's blue. So they'll be able to tell if the sticker is in compliance or not without actually stopping those vehicles all the time. They'll just be able to kind of do a drive-by and see if that vehicle is in compliance.
And then are the other municipalities around here doing similar fees? And that seems pretty high for them. The ones I was looking at, Galveston is $25 a year, League City is $50 for 2 years, and then we jumped it up to $60. I have a problem with $50. And then
Sort of.
revised to $60, so I was just wondering what.
Yeah, they're all over the place. We could definitely drop that down to 30 or whatever council's pleasure is, as long as it's kind of divisible by 12 so we can prorate it. So we could do like a 36 or something if that's
And it
council's
needs to
pleasure.
be every year.
We could do a 2-year as well. I think the comments from the police chief were that he was looking to do some sort of annual, so it's visually, so you know.
And most insurance companies don't insure, I mean, it's an annual policy. And I think insurance is a really important part of this.
What
So,
about the inspection? Who does that?
please,
So
that's why,
our police department's going to go to them?
no,
No, they would bring it in and basically PD would check the 2 headlamps, 2 tail lamps, side reflectors, rear view mirror, the slow moving vehicle emblem, and an insurance policy that covers it. And then they would issue the permit and decal.
We even added the exhaust and who knows who's gonna cover that? Yeah, but, and then the other question I have was about, neighborhood electric vehicles, because they're not the same as golf carts, but a lot of people do drive them, I know around our neighborhood, and then also side by sides and things like that, because those, where we stand on those, because I don't see them.
We'd have to look, the definition basically goes to the Texas Transportation Code 551.409. So the definition of golf cart is a motor vehicle designed by the manufacturer primarily for transporting persons on a golf course. And then it refers to the Texas Transportation Code 551.409. So we'd have to look and see if those other vehicles, we could somehow exempt those out if that's something that was council's instruction.
It seems like you would,
If we need them, if we
Yeah.
have monitor golf carts, all of them should be, because they're all over our roads in our neighborhood too.
Side by sides are side by sides, and your Polaris, Gators, stuff like that, are governed by TDLR, Texas Department of Life.
Yeah, those are going to be like an ATV type.
Because we use those in construction sites all the time, we're driving on the roads, you have to have the blinker, you have to have the mirrors, you have to have the lights, and the slow moving.
I see kids driving.
Right,
Yes.
and it's illegal. So they should, I mean, they get pulled over and get a ticket and sent home and everything else, it's illegal because those are not ruled by a city ordinance, they're ruled by a state ordinance.
But it's somebody that has the electric scooter is driving on the road, like, why would we put that in there and regulate that?
it's not a scooter, I'm talking about it's like a golf cart, but it's a little bit bigger, but it's.
like
it's
a
vehicle.
UTV, a utility vehicle, right?
Yeah,
I mean, when I looked at it, it's called neighborhood electric vehicle, and they're different than golf carts, they're not governed like golf carts, so I was just wondering where that falls in, are they legal or not? Do we care?
we would have to basically look and see if it met that definition, and if that's something that you'd like to add in, we can explicitly do that. I'd have to basically cross-reference that with sort of how those are how those are treated under the Texas Transportation Code, and whether they would consider that to be a golf cart. If it was designed primarily for transporting persons on a golf course, if the ATVs would be something different, the Polaris and
Any apps that you talk about, the electric vehicles, the things that you see pretty much in the Del Webb
Yeah.
community or some, they are golf carts, but they have 4 seats instead of racks for golf clubs. Or they have a utility platform in the back for grounds and maintenance, or they are at, or a club car, an electric club car.
They're plug
Check on that,
cars and
because
easy
when I
go.
looked it up, it said specifically, it does not fall under golf carts, and TML said it did not, so unless something has changed.
Oh, they use it as transportation.
I can definitely take a look at that and see, is it council's sort of direction without taking a vote? Is it council's direction that you would want that included or you would want that excluded, the neighborhood utility vehicles? It seems like functionally, they probably look a lot like a golf cart, just with the extra seats instead of the bench. So would you want those expressly included?
It would need to be included.
Oh, I would, yeah, I'd like to know what they are, considered a golf cart, or do we need to address that separately or add that to our ordinance?
I think it would be basically how they're marketed, how the manufacturer says, if it's primarily for transporting persons on a golf course. If they're saying these are something different, and that could be a gray area, but we can definitely put the language in there to include them.
I think for the sake of trying to do this first time out, we are approved golf carts. That's an easy go, that's, you know, the Yamaha brands that are true golf carts, electric or gas, and that we hold off on UTV kind of things you can go to Tractor Supply and buy until we get a good feel for how we're gonna manage the golf cart side of this. Because all what you're taking a piece of equipment that was really intended for the ranch, and you're putting it on the street. And I know that, I mean, I own one. They, you know, they have all the bells and whistles. But I don't know that that's our intent. Our intent is to make our community a golf cart friendly community. Maybe, David, you can look at some of these other surrounding communities and see how they've dealt with that too.
Yeah, in putting together this ordinance, we used several that had been adopted. I'm not sure that neighborhood electrical vehicle, I'll check and see. That may also be designated at the federal level as something slightly different than a golf cart, but I can certainly look at bringing back an amendment if that's council's pleasure.
So we can put this off until October and do that research and come back again. Is that reasonable?
It does look like it does fall in under the under U.S. Department of Transportation. So we'll need to tweak the amendment a little bit to capture that.
Or you can approve the golf carts with an understanding that we may be adding an additional vehicle description to it in October. So you can approve golf carts today.
The 35 mile an hour, and the only more roads at 35 mile an hour.
That's correct. So they can only,
What's that last speed limit?
It's supposed to be 30.
30.
It's supposed to be 30,
It is 30.
so. It's supposed to
Even
be
though it's
30.
But they choose that
Okay.
money.
So technically, somebody can drive from Georgetown down Kelly Lane to Diamond.
But
Oh, yeah.
but then they can't go anywhere else from Dallas. They
They
can just stay on Dallas and Marshall and all the other streets, but then they can't cross Highway 5 to get downtown.
Yes, they can.
Well, Highway 5 is 40, isn't it?
But you can clear it out, establish crossing.
If it's a four-way signal, they can cross at that four-way signal. They can't drive down Highway 5,
Yeah, they can't drive down Highway 5.
but they could drive down Preston.
Yeah, across the city. Okay. I was just trying to figure out how somebody would navigate. I don't know. We have any golf carts around town?
Oh, you'd be surprised how many around there.
What?
Well, Jimmy, you want to lower the fees? Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think it'll be $60.
Well, I didn't know if that was under this one, and that's 18 feet, I don't know, is that 17 or 18? I mean, that's,
18.
yeah.
so we could lower the fee to 36 or 48. Those are both visible by 12.
I say 36.
36.
What's the fine for not, for driving around in other directions?
Could be up to, the municipal court will set it, will set what's called a window fine, but it could be anywhere up to, I think, $200. So it'd probably more likely be somewhere in like the 120, 150 range for the window.
Do you know if Hannah or, I'm sure how does it, but Melissa, do they have an ordinance like this? or-
I'm not sure if they do, but most of the municipalities that are adopting them are adopting their standard municipal ordinance, which is like a $200, up to $200 penalty.
I was wondering about the fees, are those comparable to other cities, or did we just?
We can definitely check and see what the.
I had the police chief check and he came back saying that lows were 25, highs were around 50. And he preferred that 50 range so that he can buy the stickers. You have to get 2 stickers per vehicle and have a police officer walk out and do the inspection.
I didn't think about how that.
It does, yeah, it does help that they're doing the inspection. I thought they were gonna have the cost of the inspection every year plus.
No, that fee is inclusive of all of that.
That makes
Well,
sense.
I'm really just 60. It's not $20 per sticker, it's $60 for everyone.
Yeah.
60 bucks.
Which is
$50.
reasonable, you know.
Mhm.
You want to save gas, right around there?
Okay, any other comments, observations on item 17? Ordinance establishing golf cart regulations.
I think I was gonna say was to Ryan's comment about the only seating the people that it's built for. Basically, I know I have seen kids around Georgetown, which they should be driving anyway, but literally hanging off the back of the bar, they're not sitting anywhere.
And that's
They
just
go
not,
around the corner and they're just like,
well, that's not what I'm
Hang on.
referring to. All the difference is laying just sitting, nobody's sitting in your
Right.
lap.
I get it, but
I don't
I'm
like
just
that
saying,
language.
if you make that more lenient, then where does it end?
Well, I think you can limit that if you wanted to, as far as the wording on it, you can,
Nobody hanging from the side, standing up.
yeah,
on
you
the
can
back.
not, you know, all parties must be sitting, that would be,
Just like the large makers.
One passenger receipt.
that's fine.
Yes, I understand, and I think yeah, trust me, I'm that guy. But I also understand that in a fully enclosed car that does the speed limit, you have to have your child in a car seat, strapped in. I don't think we should go any less than sitting in, one person per seat.
Golf carts turn over easy too. If they're at 30 miles an hour and they make a sharp left
Yeah, it
turn.
hurts.
But again,
Me
if
too.
we're taking liability, then I get it, screw it to the nine, make it as impenetrable as possible, but if you want somebody, if, the reason why they have a golf cart in a community is so they can go from one place to another inside the community without having to walk, that's why they have a golf cart.
Or
inside the
strap your
community.
kid in.
And if you wanna put your 3-year-old on your lap with your wife and you and your wife, then I don't see, if it's hot seat, you don't see why you should get a $200 ticket for doing that. That's my opinion. But you're not driving a car. You'd be driving a car to drive a car, not a golf cart. You wouldn't own a golf cart then. That's my point.
Same logic, safety, that's the reason.
Yeah. If you wanna put it to vote.
You can change wording or do whatever you want, as long as it's not voted on, you can offer,
I think my point on it.
We're gonna get him a limo golf cart.
There's 12 passengers.
Now I hear him, and I know what he's saying.
we all do it. And
Yeah.
that's, I'm with his point on that,
But-
but you'll have those that'll take it to the extreme. But
Right.
again, if we're not liable, then that's up to each individual to make their own decision.
Well, I think you put common sense in your ordinance, and then if somebody wants to do that, then that's their prerogative to do that. I mean, we're all adults. You make
That
your
probably
decision.
would come with the $200 fine, if they did it.
If they got caught.
If they got caught, there's the case.
Perhaps a warning.
What kind of changes are we looking at making? I mean, I'd rather have it right the first time than come back and, so if there's changes to be made, let's wait till October.
I can include the neighborhood electrical vehicle, that is a federal deal, so it'd be just a couple of lines to redefine golf cart, you can bring that back.
I'm gonna say, okay, we'll just until next month, we'll have it back the first time.
Would that be a motion?
Yes.
A motion to table, postpone action on item 17 until our October meeting. Is that a second to the motion? Right, I seconded the motion to postpone action until our October meeting. Before we go to a quick question, would it be possible for us, if we had a special event permit in town, for example, Florida, sometimes they use golf carts to run around, could your special event permit allow use of golf carts which are not permitted? Or,
I'm sure we could make a provision.
Yeah, I can put an exception in there for that.
okay,
Good point.
I wouldn't want to have to pay the $60 and get a permit
Or whatever.
or borrow and
Yeah.
Joe Box golf cart for an afternoon. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion to postpone?
Do we have to pay for it, or can we just do no action?
That's a good question for the mayor. That's his meeting.
I would prefer that we vote to postpone it at this time. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of postponing action, please say aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? We will take this up again next month. Item 18 is approval of an ordinance amending City of Alstyne Code of Ordinances, Section 2-183, city fee schedule adopted to add a fee for mobile food vendor and golf cart permits. Any comments from city staff?
I would make a motion to approve that, because I'm down for fee.
Got a motion to approve as presented the changes to Section 2-183 fee schedule. Is there a second? Mr. Thomas, a second. Any other question?
Sorry, this, my copy says also 50, or 60 for this golf cart.
It's,
There's a new version.
there was a new version that was
somewhere.
60 and it, 60 and prorated. So if they come in after January, they only pay 5 per month.
Works for me.
Okay, any other questions on the fee schedule and the motion to approve? Hearing none, it's time to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed, or abstaining? That motion carries unanimously. Moving to item 19, approval of an ordinance amending City of Alstyne Code of Ordinances, Section 30-61, park hours to modify the hours parks are open to the public. The city staff would like to comment on this change.
Our prior ordinance allowed our city parks to be open until 11
Midnight.
PM,
Midnight.
with
Midnight.
midnight. We've had a couple of instances as of late where people have appeared and shown disruptive behavior after that period, up till midnight and beyond, turning on lights in their parks and doing damage. So our thought was to put it at 10 p.m.
So my thought on this was only one, and that was the tennis courts at Forest Moore. People like to play past 10 o'clock. I mean, I see it all the time. I mean, I don't go to the park past 10 o'clock, but people like to go and play. So I was thinking a compromise of 11, right? I agree, no park should be open until midnight. That's just asking for trouble. But I think people like to play at Forest Moore past 10 o'clock. That's my only thought on that.
And I kind of thought of the same thing. You get a hot summer day, it then cool off for 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
If then.
People start playing at 8 or 9, they'll go for 2 hours, 2.5 hours of play, lights on, it doesn't disturb. I mean, that's my only thought on this, is for the tennis courts at Forest Moore.
And so we could either compromise on the time, we could make an exception for more, we could make an exception just for the tennis court. One of the options.
I'm okay with that. I mean, whatever you, I mean, I'm okay with just an exception, or 11 o'clock across the board, or 10 o'clock. You know, all parks except for tennis courts to stay open until 11.
Would we need an exception for like tournaments or anything like that for ball games?
It was will be under special, but then.
Yeah, if it's a special event, we can make an exception.
So it doesn't need to be in this.
But if it's tennis specific, and I think Mark Moss is our big tennis guy in town, we could put something in the ordinance that says Forest Moore tennis courts only for participating in the sport of tennis. Because if we don't, we're gonna.
Unless engaged actively in a
Yeah.
sport event.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
Anybody can bring stuff home.
If you said sporting event, that was what the trouble was.
What I'm obviously trying to prohibit is allowing a group of kids to invade one of our parks and do a lot of damage, and they have done that, so. And, you know, beyond tennis, it just probably isn't the right place. but-
Well, I'm thinking, not just the tennis, I see the tennis guys over there also, but I also know the bigger we get, we're gonna end up with kids doing baseball any evenings, and, you know, when it starts cooling off, especially during summer league and stuff like that, they work out when they can. And so, I mean, if they're productively and actively involved in an organized sporting event, whether it's practice or, you know, working out, that's fine, but if somebody's out there driving their skateboard on a picnic table, no.
That point, people that are doing the damage really don't care what our hours are, they can do it whatever they want. But I agree with, I think, Tim, that be too early in the summer, especially the.
Just becomes enforceable, that's all.
Just gives us something
Nothing, I
better.
mean, the bad guys, you're still gonna have bad guys, but now we can do something about it.
I mean, it sounds like just compromising, taking the middle, making it 11 o'clock, and seeing how that goes for a while. If it's anywhere, midnight divisions is better than midnight, I don't know.
We could have
Is it
summer
also-
hours and winter hours.
What's that?
We could have summer hours and winter hours.
There you go.
Will this also apply to the social district too, downtown? That's the other issue too, because you want that to stay open, you're hoping that with this and with redeveloping, that you're getting people in there on the weekend staying past 10 o'clock. I mean, right now it's not an issue, but in the future, people will be in downtown past 10 o'clock, so I just, yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to amend it at some point in the future, if that's the case with that, if we do 10 o'clock. That's just my point, that's why I'm gonna get into this.
I like the summer hour, winter hour idea, because winter, you're not gonna have the issue, trying to be out there 11 o'clock at night anyway.
We're just modifying the ordinance, right? And then say what time. We're doing this at work.
It doesn't hurt. And it goes change. And Ryan's saying 11. It does say unless otherwise posted. So that would allow us the ability to post something different on the agenda and not have to do anything other than what we're bringing to right here.
Still be an issue.
Yeah, that's correct. You could specially post the tennis courts for closing at whatever time, at 11 or whatever.
Right, but we wouldn't have to put it in here, we would just have to post it on the course itself where it already is.
Correct.
I'm okay with that, as long as we make an amendment when social district park comes to keep that open later at 10 o'clock.
I don't think people downtown are gonna want it to be open that late, because you get the whole residential right there around it too, you're gonna have all kinds of issues. Unless we have if we're having something going on, that's different, but we're not gonna have something every weekend.
Well, the hope is actually that people stay out past 9 o'clock. And get people actually using downtown and eating in downtown, eating in downtown.
So that would be good too.
That's just my thought there. I'm okay with just putting a posted time on the tennis courts, that's fine with me. I just think 11 o'clock is more. Still early, I mean, it's not, there's just a difference there. But, I don't really know.
I think it's good, and we have the whole point of it is encompassing everything else, but it's unless posted otherwise, it's 15.
So you're saying 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock?
Keep it 10 o'clock,
Keep it
say
10
somebody
o'clock.
that's posted,
Right.
that's posted different. And somebody from city of enforcement is posted. Tennis courts open at midnight or 11 o'clock or whatever.
We can do the same thing on our social district as well, but it still encompasses everything, it's unless posted. Different.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Cool.
So approve it as is at 10 unless posted otherwise.
Which that language is already.
Yeah.
It is, yes.
Sorry there.
It is also, it's a defense of prosecution under the section where the sign has been posted on the park property, that is the extending park hours.
Well, we post it online too, won't it?
We
We post hours of
yeah.
operations, everything online, so we post tennis court operation hours too as well.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Got a motion to approve the park hours and a second. Any further discussion on item 19? Hearing none, it's time to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, abstaining, that motion carries unanimously. We're moving to item 21 on the regular agenda. Consider and take any action necessary regarding approval of an ordinance of the city council of the city of Alstyne, Texas, annexing property into the city of Alstyne, Texas, being described as a 39.875 acre tract, being described as a tract of land situated in the road and Cooper survey, Abstract number 201, Grayson County, Texas. Also situated at the William Craig Survey, abstract number 164, in the NH Haney Survey, abstract number 431, Collin County, Texas. And generally located north of County Road 377 and east of the Dallas Freeway Rapid Transit Railroad, extending the boundary limits of the city so as to include the described property and adopting a service plan. So we held a public hearing earlier this evening, received no comments on the,
I'll make a motion to approve the annexation.
Second.
a motion and a second to approve the annexation. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we shall vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? That motion carries unanimously. Item 22, if there's no objection, I will dispense with reading the legal description of the property. It is the same property we have just annexed, requesting a zoning change from agricultural to manufacturing industrial district heavy at I-2. Hearing no objection, I will dispense with reading the legal description. Is there any question, comments on the zoning change? Again, we have a public hearing, there is no comments.
Motion to approve the zoning change.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the change of zoning on this property. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? That motion carries unanimously. Item 23, consider and take any action necessary regarding the ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2020-2021 City of Alstyne operating budget.
I've provided each of you with a complete operating budget for the next year. Nothing has changed since our last meeting. Our property tax rate stays at 0.584456. And all of our operating expenditures have remained consistent with our prior meetings.
I'll make a motion to adopt the 2020-2021 City of Alstyne operating budget as is.
We have a motion by Mr. Neal, seconded by Mr. Jessica, to adopt the ordinance as presented. This vote must be a recorded vote. Is there any further discussion on the budget? Hearing none, it's time to vote. Mr. Neal, what say you? Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Jessica?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Ms. Oshma? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. Item 24, consider and take any action necessary regarding ratifying by vote the property tax increase reflected in the budget mandated by the Texas Local Government Code Section 102-007. Staff, any comments on this?
That property tax increase is an increase in revenue. It's not an increase in the tax rate. Our revenue went up approximately $303,000, of which $122,000 of that increase came from new property development within Van Alstyne. The tax rate remains the same as the prior year, and it is the third year in a row we have either reduced our property tax rate or maintained it at the prior year level.
And Mayor and council, on this one, the legislature mandates some magic language they require, noting the increase in revenue. So it's in the staff comment section of the report.
All right, I'll make a motion. I move to ratify that the 2020-2021 budget requires raising more revenue from property tax than last year's budget.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion on that? Once again, this must be a recorded vote. I'll start at the other end.
Aye.
Ms. Oshma? Aye. Mr. Thomas, what say you?
Aye.
Mr. Jessica? Ms. Butler?
Aye.
And
Aye.
Mr. Lane? Thank you. That motion carries unanimously, all council members having voted aye. Item 25, consider and take any action necessary regarding adopting an ordinance and levying taxes for the 2020 tax year. Any comments? Let's raise taxes. Mr. Jessica had made a motion to levy taxes.
Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the 2020 tax year and the city's desire to levy those taxes? Hearing none, it's time to vote, it must be a recorded vote, we'll start back with you. None.
Aye.
Norma, Reed, Vicky. That motion carries unanimously, all councilpersons having voted aye. Item 26, consider and take any action necessary regarding cancellation of award of the construction contract to Vessels Construction for the water and sewer line improvement along Dallas Avenue from Shreveport Street to Jefferson Street in the amount of $565,167.39. Comments from city staff?
What's the short version of this? What happened?
Well, you awarded the contract back in February. The pandemic hit, we stopped spending on it. We just delayed it. So prices are old. The new thought was it's in this budget that you just adopted, that we rebid it. We only had one bidder at the time, and get it out for competitive bids, and it started again.
Just to be clear, no contract was ever executed, just the bid awarded, so the city's not breaking a contract. There was none to do so.
And where are we posting it at? Just on our website, on the city page and that's it?
In the city page, and then we put it out with the bid rooms, the plan rooms, Dodge reports, and Texas Construct, and there's about 3 or 4 bid rooms where this kind of project goes out, and all the local contractors who are working in the area will have a chance to see it.
And based on David's comment, I assume there's no legal ramifications from
Correct, that was,
Vessels Construction to come back and say you canceled on us?
yeah, that was my primary concern, is to make sure no contract had yet been executed, and that is the case.
We have been notified? Or
And
what?
if they are being notified post decision,
Do we think that the bids would be less now?
we're
That's
thinking, the budget that you approved just a few minutes ago has this $565,000 number in it, so if it comes in more, we will be asking for a budget amendment. So
Okay, any other questions regarding the cancellation of the award?
I'll make a motion to approve the cancellation for the contract or for the bid of the Dallas project.
Got a motion to cancel the contract, award of the construction contract, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Jeske has seconded, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed, anyone abstaining, that motion carries unanimously. Item 27, consider and take any action necessary regarding authorizing advertisement for bids for the water and sewer line improvements along Dallas Avenue from Shreveport Street to Jefferson Street.
and this is the same project, same scope, same design, just getting it out for bids and get it out in a competitive market with all the new utility contractors that are in town. Last couple bids for the Thompson offsite, we had 4 bids, so we're seeing more active bidders in this environment than we had in the prior.
Very good.
I'll make a motion to approve the action necessary regarding authorization for the advertisement for the bid for water and sewer line improvement along Dallas and Shreveport, from Shreveport to
Have a motion to authorize advertisement for bids, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Jeske is seconded, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining, that motion carries unanimously. Item 28, consider and take any action necessary regarding authorizing advertisement for bids for the sewer line improvement along Clement Avenue from John Douglas Road to Pearl Street.
This is a project that is in your newly approved budget that was bid last year, had no bidders on it, and so we just kind of put it on the shelf until now. Time to get it out and get it bid.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions? Any motions? A motion to approve authorizing advertisement for bids for the sewer line project along Clement Avenue. Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? That motion carries unanimously. Item 29, city manager's report.
I'll forego with reading my city manager letter since we have discussed most of the topics that are on there. I do want to thank my staff for putting together a very professional looking presentation for the budget that we could present to you. I think everybody takes a lot of pride with what they do, and it really shows. The only other thing I'd like to share tonight is, as you go out the door, if you hear the hissing of mosquito spraying, that is going on tonight, starting at 9 p.m. And will probably go till just after midnight, and they'll cover the entire city in one evening.
Very good, thank you, sir. Anyone else in city staff want to make comments at this time? Hearing none, we'll move to item 30, mayor and council closing comments. I will ask Mr. Jessup if there's anything he wants to comment on.
Yes. First of all, my usual thank yous to all our citizens and all of our city staff, our first responders, everybody for making this city the best city I think there is in the whole state of Texas. I would also like to thank everybody for their support and faith in me as a council member. I've been on the council since early spring of 2014 when I accepted the role of filling out an unexpired term and been elected several times afterwards. I'm respectfully stepping down from my council seat in order to take a position with the city as the finance director and deputy city manager. Thank each and every one of you. It's been an honor and a privilege sitting on this council behind this table. Made a lot of friends and associates and everything. It's been a wonderful ride on this side of the table, and I'm going to be on that side of the table. So thank you everybody for everything.
I do appreciate your service in so many ways, not only on council, but other boards as well, over many years. Thank you. Thank you. Katrina, you want to follow that?
I'll say congratulations on the position and best of luck. I'm glad for at least keeping you around. Those will be big shoes to fill on council.
Big shoes over there too. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Robert, I'm a great, my closing comments, Robert. It's been a wonderful, wonderful experience sitting next to you and working with you for the past 4 years. Have you been this 4 years? 4 years. So, I appreciate you helping me through along the way. Over the time we have had. So, you will be missed. I'll enjoy you over there, but I will miss your council sitting next to you. Appreciate it.
I don't like the device, and it's not even a device, just over there. But no, definitely made the best choice.
Thank you.
Super proud of you two for doing that, and you're just gonna be awesome. That's all.
Yeah, just appreciate you and being able to serve with you over these past 2.5 years now, maybe 2.5 years, but yeah, good luck over there. Like Marla said, Wayne did a good job finding the right guy to hire for that position. I'm glad that was able to open up for you, and I look at who's more Van Alstyne than you, and there's not really very many people out there who's more Van Alstyne than you, so appreciate you.
Very good, indeed. Thank you for your service. I know that will continue on the city staff side, and we look very much forward to your expertise in that area. Having no other, Sam, yes. Yes. Okay, hearing no other comments, it's time to adjourn. Anyone like to make that motion? Yes, Mr. Judge.
We can do the motion in a second.
Robert has moved to adjourn. I think it's on the 22nd, that motion. We did indeed, all in favor, please say aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you all very much. And it's 8:59.
That's a long time.